Absolutely amazing. Amanda Quayle's The Clam was what just came on when I got off the phone with my friend whose company is called BAM. So, woo! And we were talking about the Wham Bam Thank You Ma'am experience of late that really taught me a lot, and I'm so grateful. However, not so recently that it will reveal any evenings or days for which others would feel offended or betrayed by my sharing, per se. Hopefully. But in the end, offense is a choice. And I believe that we need to now stop being so easily offended and recognize how we are here to be upended so that we can see how every ending has a new beginning starting the next chapter of the journey. And in The Clam, which is told very humorously in Amanda Quayle's play, I believe it would have been an oyster speaking to a clam who was saying he wished he could be an oyster so that he could hold the pearl in his clutches. And she, who was, said, well, would you like me to give you the pearl? And I think you should hold it. And so the clam said, oh yes, please put it on my put it on my shell, or the muscly part of the clam. And then he experienced the joy of receiving the pearl, and then had anxiety as to the pressure of continuing to hold it, and said, I think you should take it back now, yes, take it back. And so when the oyster took the clam's pearl, of which it was originally hers anyway, back, that was when the clam came to have a breakthrough, where he came to see that he was jealous of the wrong thing, because oftentimes an oyster will carry a pearl through its entire life, having to hold it on its tongue without anyone necessarily ever finding it, never idolizing or remarking on all that it took for the oyster to turn that grain of sand into the pearl in the first place. And I reflect on the journey that has went into me becoming the one who is writing a book I do believe the world will benefit from. And in writing it, it's parallel to the clam that wanted to be an oyster and then got to play the part for long enough to say, whoa, that's too much. Not interested, was really grateful for the experience and to have got to touch it, and then to find that I was jealous of the wrong thing and I prefer not having the pearl and you can keep it. That whole experience is, I feel like, what I went through. And in the book too, I write how when I started writing it, it was for the wrong reasons, because I wanted the world to validate my worth by having this book be a major success, where now, 5 years later, I no longer write for that reason, but instead write from the lived experience of having used and applied the theories that did not help so much as the stories that I gained from the journey that inadvertently applied those theories and gave me the lived experience from the pearl, so to speak. And so here is where then I unfurl the truth, in that now I write because I have a story worth sharing. First, without lived experience, with only noxus or knowledge, we desire for others to validate and affirm our worth based on what we write. And then after we've lived it and went through the fight between the light and dark within, we then say, this is worth reading for your benefit, which was always the intention, except for there was a different egoic attachment to each, the latter of which is the present now, where I say, hey, no judgment. The first version, the second version, and the third version would have been valuable, would have benefited those who read it, maybe, as one of the stories I tell and was my favorite to have told when I was locked up in the mental health system because I made a really bad call and reported the system to the very men in blue who are sworn to uphold the lies in order to maintain their positions that they gain their value from, because that is the world of statuses we come from. And I got locked up and I learned and I lived, and then have had a lot of scorched earth to seed, and do actually have plants in the back to be starting a garden from, for which I am grateful, including the rosemary, which is an herb that is connected to the divine feminine, which I am embracing more deeply because the masculine had to lead for a long time because my heart was bleeding, not just blue. It was bleeding red from all of the cuts and bruises that drew what was inside to the surface to be oxidized, not rusted, because I didn't have time, I didn't make time for the oxidization to take place, but the oxygenation, where I had the blue blood turn red because it was exposed to air. The hawk flies above to say focus there. We could go into some rabbit holes people don't want to accept, such as the adrenochrome phenomenon, which is the adrenalized blood extracted from tortured souls, which is a phenomenon we wouldn't wish to believe is true. It's horrendous and needs to come to an end. And we must also then see how menticide has been used as a tool to create adrenochrome from an inner tortured soul perspective that turns men and women into patients. We have to start seeing how the statuses that we wear corrupt the ones wearing them, because we think we are still that which we originally were, except for the status would have us become aboriginal, ab being from, or no longer the original. Do you see how it works? Aboriginals have to carry a status card to show who they are, when as a man or woman, the original stands whole and complete in and of themselves, able to compete with the world around, because we have come to wear the crown of the corona, which is actually the fully embodied crown chakra that is radiating the light that shows we allowed the light to win within us. And then we also must see how the more light we embody, the more shadow gets exposed. And as a whole, we are experiencing the exposure of the shadows within the collective consciousness that is sick, toxic, and no longer able to stay as it was, which is why May 22nd to 28th, there is a significant conference taking place that would have the new orderly world be something we do not wish for, and why the NWO must have the order switched so it becomes the now here, which is nowhere depending on the space that we place within the words that are the sacred swords that will either set us free or keep us in captivity. Lots of rhymes, as you know I love to do, so I'd love to know what this message means to you, what this message means for you, what you're going to do with it. I'd love to know whether you are an oyster that is carrying a pearl that you have refined from the grains of sand that have changed who you are and the worth you see yourself to have, not because you accrued status on the outside, but because you saw what you were the whole time. Or whether you are sitting in the clam state of wishing that you had the bait that would take you out of the now into wishing to be other than you originally were. Whether you will accept a status and carry a card to identify yourself based on a de facto governmental system, governmental body that would try to change your identity to believe yourself to be less than what you truly are. My friend, you are enough, as you are, without any change required. Yes, growth will naturally lead to change, but it does not mean that underneath of that you are not enough. It means you would not be guided to that which is calling you if you were not equipped to fulfill the task. So, I say that at 12:12, and the lighting changed in that moment. I am at a stop sign, and I am sending you love from the divine in me to the divine in you. Namaste. Laura J. Toodaloo. For today.